All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at something pretty crucial, especially for you Marines out there.
Intelligence.
Yeah, intelligence, exactly. Specifically, we'll be breaking down Marine Corps Doctrinal Publication 2, Chapter 1, appropriately titled The Nature of Intelligence.
And look, we know you guys are busy, so think of this deep dive as your sort of cheat sheet, your field guide, if you will.
Exactly. To really getting the most out of this really important doctrine.
We're not here to replace reading the MCDP itself.
No.
We're here to highlight the key points, give you some context, and hopefully get you thinking about how you can use intelligence effectively out there in the field.
Because as we all know, especially you Marines, intelligence can really make or break a mission.
Oh, absolutely. You know, there's that old saying, know your enemy. Well,
Yeah.
it comes from Sun Tzu. Know your enemy, know yourself. Your victory will never be endangered.
Right. Pretty straightforward, right?
You'd think so, but it's amazing how often that gets overlooked.
Yeah, and especially for the Marine Corps, right?
Oh, totally.
With their whole emphasis on maneuver warfare, intelligence is absolutely vital.
Couldn't agree more. Maneuver warfare, we're talking speed, agility, hitting the enemy where they're weakest.
Right.
You can't do that if you're operating in the dark.
No. It'd be like trying to play blindfolded chess, right?
Ah, exactly.
You have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of that quote from Field Marshal Rommel, the Desert Fox. He said, "The situation on the battlefield is always fluid.
Oh, yeah.
The side that can best adapt to the changing conditions will prevail."
Adapt. And that ability to adapt comes from having a clear picture of what's happening, which brings us back to intelligence.
Right.
It's not about replacing a commander's skill or intuition, though.
No.
It's about giving them the information they need to make the best possible decisions. And the MCDP, it drives home this point. Intelligence IS combat power. It gives you the edge, whether you're on the attack or the defense.
And there are so many examples of that throughout history.
Oh, tons. World War II, the Battle of Midway.
Yeah.
Huge turning point in the Pacific. We were outnumbered by the Japanese, but because we cracked their naval code,
Oh, wow.
we were able to ambush their fleet, inflict a decisive defeat. That victory built on intelligence.
Wow. So, okay, we're clear on why intelligence matters.
Mm-hmm.
But what exactly is it? Like, how does the MCDP, how does it define intelligence?
Well, it lays out two core objectives.
Okay.
The first one is giving commanders a clear picture of the enemy and the environment they're operating in,
Okay.
which basically means reducing uncertainty. The less guesswork involved, the better.
Right.
The second objective is protecting your own one forces through counterintelligence.
So it's kind of a two-way street?
Yeah, think of it like that.
Okay.
We need to figure out what they're up to and make sure they don't know what we're up to.
Gotcha. So when the MCDP talks about this whole clear picture thing,
Right.
it's more than just like knowing where the enemy is, right?
Yeah, way more. It's about understanding their strengths and weaknesses, predicting their likely courses of action, and even figuring out your own vulnerabilities so you can protect against them.
Okay, so it's really about using all that information to actually make smart decisions and plan effective operations.
Exactly.
So it's almost like painting a battlefield picture,
Yeah, I like that.
but actually probably several possible pictures, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because the enemy has their own plans and they can react in unpredictable ways.
They're not going to sit still and let us figure them out.
Right, exactly. So we got to be ready for those multiple scenarios.
That's a great analogy. And this is where we get to the difference between data and knowledge. Think of reports, intercepts, satellite imagery. That's all data, raw material. Intelligence is about taking that raw material and turning it into actionable understanding, into knowledge that can be used to make decisions.
So it's not just about gathering tons of data. It's about analyzing it, connecting the dots and figuring out what it all means.
You got it. It's a process, not just a magic department that spits out answers.
Right, right. And the MCDP, it really emphasizes that intelligence isn't some separate activity. It's woven into every aspect of operations.
Exactly. You know, they even bring up the ODA loop.
Oh, yeah.
Observe, orient, decide, act. That cycle of decision-making in combat.
Right.
Intelligence plays a crucial role in those first two steps.
Observe and orient.
Yep. It's about gathering information and making sense of it so you can make the right decisions and act effectively.
You know, I think there's often this kind of air of mystery around intelligence, though.
Oh, yeah.
Especially for those of us who aren't directly involved.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like it's this super secret world with its own language and methods. And I imagine some Marines they might feel that way, right?
There's definitely some truth to that,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to the technical side and classified information. But the MCDP, it does a good job of demystifying things. It emphasizes that while technology and security protocols, they're important, intelligence ultimately boils down to good thinking, hard work, and asking the right questions to give the commander the information they need.
So it's less about like James Bond gadgets
Right.
and more about using your brain power and experience to solve puzzles,
Yes,
anticipate threats, and basically outsmart the enemy.
you got it. But let's not sugarcoat things, though. There are inherent challenges in intelligence gathering. You can ask your troops where they are and get a pretty accurate answer. The enemy, on the other hand, is not going to cooperate.
No, they're not exactly going to fill out a survey about their true positions.
Yeah.
Or their plans for next Tuesday's attack.
Definitely not. They're actively trying to hide, deceive, and change the situation on the ground, making it as difficult as possible for us to get a clear picture. And the closer you get to them, the harder it becomes.
It's almost ironic, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we might know more about what's happening in their capital city than what's happening on the hill, like right ahead of us. All thanks to their efforts to stay hidden.
Happens all the time. And even when we do manage to gather information, there are 3 major hurdles we got to overcome. First, we got to interpret the information correctly. It's not just about the quantity of information, but the quality and our ability to make sense of it in context.
Right. So one intercepted message or a single satellite image could have multiple interpretations.
Right.
And choosing the right one is crucial.
Absolutely. The second hurdle is predicting the future. We can see what the enemy is capable of doing,
Right.
but their intentions are a whole other story. Those are locked away in their minds.
Yeah, so even if we know they have a tank battalion, we don't necessarily know where and when they plan to use it.
Exactly. And this brings us to the third hurdle, deception. Did we uncover their actual plan, or did they want us to find it? Are they leading us into a trap?
It's like a constant game of chess.
It is.
Where the opponent is always trying to outmaneuver you.
Always. And here's the real kicker sometimes. Good intelligence can actually make itself wrong by making the enemy change their plans.
So wait, so if our intelligence is so good that the enemy realizes we've figured them out,
Right.
then they're gonna change their tactic.
Exactly.
And then the intelligence estimate that was like spot on a few hours ago might now be useless.
That's the game. So with all these challenges, what can a Marine realistically expect from intelligence? What are its limitations?
Yeah, it's a good question. And the MCDP acknowledges this. It says we ask a lot of intelligence.
Like you
We
do.
want details, we want predictions. We even want to know what the enemy's thinking.
If only.
And the stakes are high. We crave certainty.
Of course.
But the MCDP, it injects a dose of reality. It says
Yeah.
that, yes, we have incredible tools and capabilities, BUT.
But there's inherent uncertainty in war.
Right.
Intelligence can reduce that uncertainty, but it can never eliminate it entirely.
So there will always be gaps in our knowledge, doubts about the information we have, and unexpected changes on the battlefield.
Always.
So as a Marine, you need to be comfortable operating in that gray zone, knowing that even the best intelligence is a best guess, not a guarantee.
Exactly. You can't afford to be paralyzed by the lack of perfect information. You need to be able to make decisions and act even when there are still unknowns. Which brings us to an interesting point, the information age and its impact on intelligence.
Because we're drowning in data these days, right? Thanks to technology.
That seems like it.
We have access to more information than ever before. It sounds like it'd be a dream come true for intelligence.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Right.
More data, better intelligence.
Yeah.
The MCDP throws some cold water on that idea.
Really?
It points out that these advanced systems, they're expensive, complex, and not always under your control.
Oh, I see.
They can break down, be jammed by the enemy,
Oh.
or simply prioritize information that's not relevant to your specific needs on the ground.
So even with all this data flying around,
Yeah.
it's not always the right data, or it's not getting to the right people at the right time.
Happens all the time. And even if the information is flowing perfectly, there's the human element to consider.
Right?
Our brains haven't upgraded as fast as the technology.
Right.
We're still limited in how much information we can process at once. Too much data can actually be paralyzing rather than empowering.
It's like trying to drink from a fire hose.
Yeah.
You might you might get some water,
Right.
but you're mostly going to get knocked over and overwhelmed.
Exactly. And the MCDP, it highlights another challenge, the unpredictable nature of new threats.
Okay.
Crises pop up unexpectedly, and we can't always anticipate who or what our next enemy will be.
So, so even with all this data at our fingertips, it's hard to focus our intelligence efforts because we don't always know where to look or what to prepare for.
That's right. The information age has definitely changed the intelligence game. But it hasn't solved all the problems. In fact, it's created some new ones. And to illustrate that point, the MCDP brings up a fascinating case study, Operation Desert Storm.
Oh, yeah,
Now, Desert Storm is often cited as an example of how effective intelligence can be,
it is.
but I'm guessing there's more to the story.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
While we had good intelligence overall in Desert Storm, there were some significant challenges at the tactical level, the kind of challenges that you, as a Marine, might encounter in the field.
Okay, so let's break it down.
Mhm.
Focusing on the things that would be most relevant to our listener. What were some of those intelligence gaps and difficulties?
Well, while the strategic and operational picture was pretty clear in Desert Storm, the tactical details were often lacking. This was especially true when it came to estimate an enemy's strength.
Okay, so it's one thing to know there's an enemy division in the area, but it's a whole different ballgame to know how many of those troops are actually combat effective, how much ammo they have, what their morale is like, things like that.
You got it. It's those finer details that can make all the difference on the ground. And then there were the limitations on using your own intelligence assets close to the enemy.
Yeah, I imagine there were concerns about security, operational secrecy, and maybe even accidentally triggering a fight before the main attack was launched.
All valid concerns.
Right, that makes sense.
So often, Marines on the ground had to rely on higher headquarters for their intelligence, which wasn't always ideal. Those higher headquarters, they might have different priorities, and they might not be able to respond to your specific needs as quickly as you'd like.
Right, you're in the thick of it. You're needing real-time information, and you're stuck waiting for updates from HQ.
Frustrating, I know. And add into the challenge, the early assessments of Iraqi forces, while partially accurate, they lacked the kind of detail needed to make bold moves. There was still a lot of uncertainty about how the enemy would actually fight once the ground offensive began.
So how did things start to become clearer? Was there a turning point where the intelligence picture kind of solidified?
Yeah, the Battle of Al-Kafji took place at the end of January 1991. That was a key moment. This was a significant ground engagement where an Iraqi division attacked a Saudi Arabian town.
And this battle provided something that intelligence alone couldn't, those boots on the ground, real world experience.
Exactly. Al-Kafji, it gave us firsthand knowledge of how the Iraqis fought, what their tactics were, how well trained and motivated their troops actually were.
So what did we learn from Al-Kafji? How did it change the intelligence assessments?
It confirmed a lot of suspicions that intelligence had already gathered. The battle showed that Iraqi units were poorly coordinated, their logistics were strained, and their troops, they weren't exactly eager to fight. Basically, the Iraqi army was a lot weaker than initially thought.
So this revised assessment, it led to a more aggressive plan for the ground offensive.
Oh, absolutely. Instead of cautiously probing the enemy defenses, the Marine commander decided to hit him hard and fast with a two-division assault, exploit the gaps and weaknesses that intelligence had now identified. And as we know, that plan worked brilliantly.
Yeah, it sounds like Desert Storm really highlights how intelligence can be both a powerful tool, have its limitations. We might have good understanding of the big picture, but those tactical details can be fuzzy until you actually get boots on the ground and see the enemy up close.
You said it. And it also reinforces the importance of constantly refining your intelligence assessments as new information comes in. The battlefield, it's dynamic, ever-changing. Your intelligence needs to be just as adaptable.
Speaking of adapting, let's shift gears a little bit and dive deeper into some of the core concepts that the MCDP lays out. One of the most important is the idea that intelligence is a process, not just a product.
Right.
It's about actively seeking out information, analyzing it, and turning it into something useful, not just passively waiting for it to come to you.
It's like being a detective.
Yeah.
You gather clues, you interview witnesses, you piece together a story that makes sense.
And just like a good detective, a good intelligence analyst needs to be, skeptical, thorough, always looking for connections that others might miss. The MCDP breaks down this intelligence process into 4 steps:
Yeah.
planning and direction, collection, processing, and production. Let's take a closer look at each one.
Sounds good. So planning and direction, that's where it all begins. Commanders identified their intelligence requirements. What do they absolutely need to know in order to make decisions and accomplish the mission? What are the priority intelligence requirements, often called PIRs?
So it starts with the commander saying, here's what's keeping me up at night. Here are the questions I need answers to.
Exactly. Once those PIRs are established, the intelligence team can develop a plan to collect the information needed to answer those questions. That leads us to the second step, collection.
This is where we get into the realm of spy gadgets and secret missions, right?
It can certainly involve those things, but collection is much broader than that. It encompasses all the ways we gather information about the enemy in the battle space. Think imagery from satellites or drones, signals intelligence from enemy communications, open source intelligence, which could be anything from news reports to social media, and of course human intelligence.
Right, from sources like scouts,
Hmm?
reconnaissance patrols, and even conversations with local civilians.
All of that.
Okay, so basically it's about using every tool in the toolbox to paint that complete picture of the enemy and the environment. And once you've gathered all that raw data, what happens next?
That's where processing comes in. It's taking all that raw data, reports, images, intercepts, and organizing it, filtering it, translating it into a format that analysts can use, processing it. It turns data into information.
It's like sorting through a giant pile of puzzle pieces and finding the ones that fit together.
Yeah.
You're creating order out of chaos.
I like that. And once you've got those pieces organized, you move on to the final step, production. This is where analysts take all that processed information and turn it into actual intelligence. They analyze it, look for patterns, assess enemy capabilities and intentions, and ultimately answer those PIRs that the commander identified at the beginning.
This is where the real brain power kicks in.
It is.
It's not just about regurgitating facts. It's about connecting the dots, making judgments, and providing the commander with actionable insights.
You got it. It's important to remember that intelligence production isn't a one-time thing, though. It's an ongoing cycle. As new information comes in, the assessment needs to be updated and refined. The situation on the battlefield is constantly evolving, and intelligence has to evolve along with it.
And the MCDP also emphasizes that intelligence isn't solely the responsibility of intelligence specialists. Every Marine has a role to play, whether it's reporting what they see on patrol or helping to analyze captured documents.
Couldn't agree more. Intelligence, it's a team effort. The more eyes and ears you have out there, the better your understanding of the situation will be.
It's about everyone contributing to the big picture.
Exactly. And this ties into another key concept from the MCDP, the importance of sharing information and collaborating across different units and levels of command. The enemy, they don't operate in neat little boxes. Their actions on one part of the battlefield can have ripple effects elsewhere.
So it's crucial that everyone have a shared understanding of the threat and that information flows freely up and down the chain of command.
That's the idea. And sharing information, it breaks down those barriers that can sometimes exist between different units or branches of the military, allowing for a more comprehensive and accurate intelligence picture.
And the MCDP also talks about the importance of protecting intelligence sources and methods.
Oh, right.
We don't want the enemy knowing how we're gathering information or who's helping us.
Protecting sources and methods is absolutely essential to maintaining the integrity and effectiveness of the intelligence process. It's about safeguarding our advantage and ensuring we can continue to gather the information we need to succeed. We've covered a lot of ground here. And it's clear that intelligence is a complex and multifaceted topic.
It's more than just spying or gathering data.
Right.
It's a critical process that involves planning, collecting, analyzing, and disseminating information to support decision-making at all levels of command.
And while technology has certainly changed how we gather and process information, the fundamental principles of intelligence remain the same. It's still about using your brain power, your experience, and your judgment to make sense of a complex and often chaotic environment.
Yeah, and for you as a Marine, understanding those principles and knowing how to effectively use the intelligence, it can literally be the difference between mission success and failure.
The MCDP makes it clear that every Marine is part of the intelligence process. Your observations, your insights, and your ability to think critically about the information you receive can have a direct impact on the decisions your leaders make and ultimately on the outcome of the mission.
It's about being a thinking warrior, not just following orders blindly. It's about using your head to make the best use of the information you have.
Well said. We've talked a lot about the theory of intelligence so far, but next we'll delve into some real-world applications. How is intelligence used in different types of operations? How can you, as a Marine, apply these concepts in your specific role? Stay with us as we explore the practical side of intelligence in Part 3.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been digging into MCDP2 Chapter 1, really getting a handle on the nature of intelligence and how that whole process works.
We've covered the theory, touched on some history, and now it's time to get down to brass tacks. How does all of this translate to you on the ground as a Marine?
Because knowing the textbook definition of intelligence is one thing,
Right.
but understanding how to actually use it in a real-world operation, that's where the rubber meets the road.
You got it. And the LCDP does a great job of connecting these concepts to real-world scenarios. Let's say you're part of a classic Marine mission, an amphibious assault.
Hitting the beach, securing a foothold, high stakes, lots of unknowns. Intelligence seems pretty crucial right from the start.
Absolutely. Before you even set sail, intelligence is working overtime. They're analyzing the terrain, identifying enemy defenses, figuring out the best landing spots, assessing the weather conditions.
Because landing on a heavily fortified beach under enemy fire is, let's just say, not the ideal way to start your day.
Not ideal at all. And once you're ashore, intelligence continues to play a vital role. Scouts and reconnaissance patrols are out there gathering information on enemy positions, movements, capabilities. They're feeding that information back to headquarters where it's analyzed and used to update the operational picture.
So you're constantly trying to refine your understanding of the situation, even as the battle is unfolding.
You got it. And that's where the ODA loop we talked about earlier comes into play. Observe, orient, decide, act. The faster you can cycle through that loop, the better your chances of outmaneuvering the enemy.
And intelligence is the fuel that drives that entire cycle.
It is. Now, amphibious assault is just one example. Let's shift gears and imagine you're conducting a counterinsurgency operation. The intelligence needs are very different in that kind of environment.
Because instead of facing a conventional army, you're dealing with insurgents who blend in with the population, use guerrilla tactics, and rely on these complex networks of support.
Exactly. So intelligence in this context, it's less about finding tanks and artillery positions and more about understanding the local population, identifying key leaders and influencers, and mapping out those insurgent networks.
It's about winning hearts and minds, as well as battles.
You got it. You need to know who the locals trust, who they fear, what their grievances are. That kind of intelligence can help you separate the insurgents from the population, build relationships with key leaders, and ultimately undermine the insurgency.
So whether you're conducting an amphibious assault, a counterinsurgency operation, or any other type of mission, intelligence is always going to be a critical factor.
It is. And as a Marine, you need to be aware of that, regardless of your specific job or MOS. You may not be an intelligence specialist, but you are a part of the intelligence process.
So let's talk about some specific things that you as a Marine can do to contribute to the intelligence effort. What can you do on the ground in your everyday duties to make a difference?
Well, first and foremost, be observant. Pay attention to your surroundings. Notice anything out of the ordinary. If you see something, say something.
Don't assume that someone else has already noticed it or that it's not important. Report what you see. Even if it seems insignificant at the time, it could be the missing piece of the puzzle.
And when you do report something, be as specific and accurate as possible. Don't exaggerate or speculate. Stick to the facts.
Because bad information is worse than no information.
It is.
It can lead to bad decisions and wasted effort.
Exactly. Another important thing you can do is ask questions. If you're unsure about something, don't be afraid to clarify. Talk to your leaders, talk to your fellow Marines, talk to the intelligence specialists.
The more you understand about the situation, the better equipped you'll be to make good decisions and contribute to the mission. Knowledge is power, as they say.
It is. And finally, be a critical thinker. Don't just accept information at face value. Consider the source. Look for inconsistencies and try to understand the context. Remember, the enemy is actively trying to deceive you.
So don't be afraid to challenge assumptions or ask those tough questions. The best intelligence comes from Marines who are engaged, curious, and willing to think for themselves.
That's exactly what MCDP-2 is trying to encourage, a culture of intelligence within the Marine Corps. It's about recognizing that intelligence is everyone's responsibility, not just something that happens in a shadowy back
No,
room.
it's about empowering every Marine to be a sensor, an analyst, and a contributor to the overall intelligence effort.
Well said. To wrap up this deep dive, I think the biggest takeaway from MCDP-2, Chapter 1, is this. Intelligence IS power. But it's not magic. It's a process that requires effort, skill, and constant vigilance.
And as a Marine, you are a crucial part of that process. By understanding the nature of intelligence, its limitations, and its potential, you can truly make a difference on the battlefield.
We've given you a lot to think about today, but here's one final thought to leave you with. The MCDP mentions how good intelligence can sometimes make itself wrong by causing the enemy to change their plans.
Right.
This raises a fascinating question. If we know this is possible, how can we use it to our advantage? Can we intentionally leak false information or make deceptive moves to manipulate the enemy's actions? How do we balance the need for secrecy with the potential benefits of deception?
That's something for you to ponder as you continue your journey as a Marine.
Mm-hmm.
Always be learning, always be adapting, and always be thinking one step ahead of the enemy.
That's the essence of intelligence, and it's what makes the Marine Corps the elite fighting force it is.